Blurbs and Verbs viewers and listeners. I am Chanel Spellman-Timmons, your next favorite speculative, dark fantasy, thriller, horror author. Those of you who are following my journey on Threads and Substack know that I am waist deep in these query trenches, and it has been a learning curve. And if you know me, you know anything that I put my mind to doing, I am going to learn how to do it very well. I'm going to suit up for battle if I choose to insert myself into the war. Very violent today. War, battle. Anywho. So, yes, I'm waist deep into the query trenches. And y'all, I feel like somebody is lying. I feel like every literary agent's manuscript wish list says some sort of variation of looking to elevate marginalized voices, specifically excited to read queer stories, BIPOC stories representing under or misrepresented communities. I see that on most agents' manuscript wish lists. And so, me being a Black, very, very queer woman who writes Black queer stories with representation of polyamory, platonic soulmates, and other things. I'm like, oh, y'all are looking for me. Y'all are looking for my stories. And so I was like, yeah, let's go ahead, let's query some stuff. Y'all, when I tell you that for all the excitement that these agents claim to have, it feels like it's just because that's the in thing to do, is to say you want these stories. But then when you have the chance to snatch up one of these stories, crickets. And before anybody hops in the comments, talk, well, maybe it's the story is not that good. No, ma'am. I am a very humble person. I do not like to brag. I do not like to talk my shit. Even though my good sis, T.S. Madison, says that's what needs to be done every now and then, I am not one who tends to do the things in that way. But for this, I'm going to go ahead and say the story that I am pitching is a hell of a story. It's very well written. I took my time. And I'm a dope writer. So it's not the story, it is the landscape. It's the publishing landscape. And I keep seeing very similar journeys of many other primarily Black authors who are getting the runaround. I was just reading author's frustrated rant on Threads yesterday about how a literary agent requested full manuscript and said it was great and super exciting and thrilling and a new voice in the industry and queer edge and all the things. And so she was really excited about that and sent the full manuscript and didn't hear anything back. 1 month went by, 2 months went by, 3 months went by, and then got a rejection from the agent. Like, man, you requested me. Like, you requested my full manuscript and then rejection? What happened? What was the issue? So, I just kind of want to talk about what is needed in a query package so that nobody can say that you didn't have the things lined up and all your ducks in a row and all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. as you are joining me in these query streets. Before I started querying, I watched maybe 20 different YouTube videos. I attended agent facilitated webinars. A couple of them were live, where the agent was actively taking questions from writers in the chat. And then some of them were pre-recorded, but still very helpful. I read a book, a very popular book about how to snag an agent, how to get signed. I listened to a podcast or three. And I social media stalked a few agents and soaked in all the wisdom that they have. And in a recent Substack post, I mentioned that I was going to be synthesizing all that I had learned and putting a series of videos together so that there would be more Black writers represented in this conversation. Because out of all the videos that I watched and all the podcasts that I listened to, not many of them were hosted and facilitated by Black writers. And that shouldn't be, because there's so many brilliant Black writers on the scene. Not to say that there aren't any hosted and facilitated and talked about by Black writers, because there are. There are a couple that I'm very, very grateful for. Black and Published is one of them. But I'm just gonna go ahead and do this quick little video. I haven't even planned this one out, y'all. I just woke up this morning and was like, record. So there'll be another more formal video, a little less ranty, a little more organized and formal. But for this one, just a quick and easy checklist of the things you should have in order before you start to wade in the query waters. First thing you want to do is make sure your manuscript is where it needs to be. I'm an editor. I've been editing for many, many years. And so by the time my manuscripts got to where I wanted it to be to start pitching, I had already edited 3 rounds. And then I had it edited by someone else. And then before I had it edited, I had 6 beta readers go through it and give me feedback. And then I revised a few times with that feedback in mind. It doesn't have to be perfect, because once you become agented, they are going to, and they start pitching, they're going to make sure that your manuscript is edited and fully polished anyway. But you want to make sure that there are not rookie mistakes, words misspelled, punctuation just all, wonky and whatnot. You want to make sure that that type of stuff is not showing up in your manuscript. So get it edited. I do provide sliding scale editing services for writers of color. Check out my website, ChanelTimmons.com, if you're interested, or hit me up on Threads or Instagram. So make sure your manuscript is in tip-top shape. You also want to make sure that your word count is where it should be for the genre that you are writing in. If you are writing a cozy queer romance, you might not want to pitch 150 word count, 150,000 word count manuscript to an agent for a queer cozy romance, because nobody's gonna read it. Some might read it if it's really good, but I highly doubt it. I think the sweet spot for romance is in between like 70 and 90K, and I think 90K is probably pushing it. So just do the research on what your genre word count should be. Now, if you are writing sweeping sci-fi, or something with like rich, dark fantasy lore, then you're looking at 90,000, maybe 100,000. especially if it's been well edited. Don't pitch an agent for a sweeping, epic fantasy world and you're pitching 65,000 words. That doesn't, there's no alignment there. The agent isn't going to take the pitch seriously. So just make sure your genre and your word count line up. You also want to make sure that your genre is accurate. Make sure that you have properly identified your manuscript, because a little birdie has told me that agents get big mad if they ask for horror with teeth and you give them thriller with humor. I actually had one of my beta readers give me some very good advice not to identify my story as horror because it was more on the thriller end. And she was like, as an avid horror connoisseur, there are certain things that I look for in a horror story or in a horror film that if the writer doesn't deliver, I'm disappointed. And if I'm disappointed, I'm probably not going to further read that author's things. So if you're going to say you're horror, deliver a few horror bites. Like, make sure some of those horror tropes, even if you are creatively reinventing some of the tropes, that's fine. Just make sure it's horror. Or if you're doing romance, romance readers like a little, they like a little, give them a little, if that's what they want. Yeah, so just make sure your manuscript is properly identified. My manuscript can't be boxed into one thing. So I've got a little speculative thriller going on. I've got a little urban fantasy going on. And that's okay. Genre blending is a thing. Don't shy away from that. All right. So once you are certain about those things in your manuscript, this is the piece I wasn't ready for. Writing the synopsis. Y'all, the synopsis took me through it. It took me through it. Now, I had written an almost 400-page manuscript and did not get as stressed out as I got trying to whittle that almost 400-page manuscript down to two pages of a synopsis. Some agents only want 1 page. I haven't gotten there yet. I've taken it from 2 solid pages to 1.5 pages. That's where I am. That's what I got. But I am working on a single page synopsis. It's hard. It is hard because they also want all the twists and turns, right? So your synopsis should start with a hook. Like, why should they be interested in this story? Hook me. And also let the agent know up front, the audience, like, is this adult? Is this YA? Is this middle grade? Genre, word count. You want to get that out the way fairly early in your synopsis so that the agent doesn't have to search through. Hook them, give them what they need in that introduction, the information that they need. And then the agents want to know the story. They want to know that you have connected the dots in your book and that you know where it's going, and that your plot points make sense, and that the characters know what they want, know what they need, and are trying to get it. It's not easy to whittle down to while you're writing a synopsis, but it's necessary, honestly. And it was a very good practice in taking something that's super massive and condensing it to the point where you can then hand it over to someone who's not going to have time to sit down and read 400 pages of a manuscript, but they will read a page of a very good synopsis and hopefully 1.5 pages of a very good synopsis. And they need to be able to know that the story is complete and that it makes sense and that you are delivering on the goods. I didn't know how hard it was going to be to write that. And so somebody said, actually, before you even finish writing the story, write your synopsis, write it along the way. And I'm going to try that with book number 2. Because waiting until after the book was done, ooh, it makes me itch thinking about it. You also need a good blurb, different from a synopsis. Synopsis is going to give all the main points, including the ending. Your blurb is what's on the back of a book. When you go into a bookstore or when you're looking online for a book and you have just that small little paragraph that kind of lures you into the story, gives you a little to like gnaw on, that's a blurb. Your blurb is not going to spoil the plot, not going to give away the ending. It's going to maybe introduce a character or two and introduce the stakes, what's at risk for your character. You also want to have a really good 2 to 3 sentence pitch. Some people call it an elevator pitch, others call it a publisher pitch. Whatever you want to call it, make it good, make it quick, make it snappy, make it juicy. Hook them, reel them in. What else do you need in a really good query package? Comp titles. Your comparative titles are super important. I hadn't heard much about comparative titles until I started querying or until I started watching videos about querying. And agents kept saying, you gotta nail your comp titles, make sure that your comp titles are actually comparable to what you're writing. And so I was like, oh yeah, what vibe, what energy does this story give? And it's not that you are comparing and saying, my book is just like this book. It's not what you want to do because no two books are going to be just alike. It's more so like, what is this in the vein of? You know, prove to the readers that you are well read in the genre that you are writing and that you can say, this urban fantasy sci-fi is giving N.K. Jemisin 100,000 Kingdom energy because there's similar tropes, there's magical systems, there's these very powerful deities. You know, you just want to have titles that are comparable that agents can look up and say, oh, there's a market for this. Oh, there's actually a desire there's for this type of book. And this writer is pitching me something similar to that. So you want to have 3 maybe strong comp titles. I have to talk about the query letter. So query letter, synopsis, 2 very different things. Query letter, synopsis, blurb, 3 very different things. Your query letter is what your agent is honestly probably going to read first. And your query letter introduces yourself, introduces your book. You're going to need your genre, the word count, your audience, a hook. And then your blurb is going to be a part of that query letter. You're going to introduce a character, maybe 2. If you have multiple protagonists and an antagonist, you don't want to pack too much into that query letter. You're going to give a little blurb. You're going to talk about yourself, personalize it a little bit. Like, why did you write this book? Who did you write this book for? Why is this book a good fit for the agent you are querying or the small press that you're querying? Make sure you're able to tailor that query letter to the agent and what you're looking for in an agent, why you think you'll be a good fit. Those are the things that should be in your query letter. Your query letter should be 1 page. Just one. Your synopsis, I do believe you can get away with 1 to 1.5, no more than 2 pages, closer to the 1.5 range, but your query letter, no more than 1 page. So once you've got your manuscript in a good place, once your manuscript, your story has been properly identified genre-wise, once you have a very well-written 1-page query letter, and there are some great how to write query letter videos out there. I'll also do one. Once you've got a synopsis of your whole story, once you've got a blurb, once you've got a 3-sentence pitch, and your comparative titles, you have a strong query package. Then you just got to do your research on lit agents and small presses, and yeah, do your research, make sure that you are well aligned, move in alignment. I do not pitch any and everybody, because not any and everybody is here. And I need to be here with my agent, with my publisher, with the press that I'll be working with. I need to be in alignment because alignment is important to me. So once you get those things in a row and you move forward with your query, then you can feel good about what you're putting out there. You're going to be knocking back and forth. But you won't take it personally because you know that your query package is in top tier shape. Have other people read your query package. Have a few people read over your query letter. On Query Tracker, they offer a service where agents are actually taking folks' query letters and reading it and giving feedback. This is a paid service. Pay people for labor. If you have a good friend who's willing to do it for free, great. At least buy them like lunch or something. Yeah, just make sure your stuff is in top tier shape so that the rejections that you are probably going to get, it's not, or it's not that your stuff isn't where it needs to be. It's that the industry is not where it needs to be. More on that later. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. I will unpack further what needs to be in a query letter because I feel like I didn't give that one justice. More on synopsis and how to write a strong one. Yeah. Remember, what you have to say matters. Your stories matter. And this world is a better place with your story out in it. Take care of yourself. Bye.